Welcome back. Early this morning, an assailant wearing two backpacks, wielding a machete. He tried to sneak into the world-famous Louvre Museum in Paris through an underground shopping area. He was confronted by soldiers. He shouted Allahu Akbar, and then he was shot by one of the soldiers. This is a situation that could have been much more grievously worse. Now, it appears the man, he was seriously wounded. It appears that he may have acted alone. We don't know his identity yet. We are still working on this story for you. However, French authorities are calling the attack terrorist in nature. Now, President Trump reacting, saying, quote, "A new radical Islamic terrorist has just attacked the Louvre Museum in Paris. Tourists were locked down. France on edge yet again. Get smart, U.S." My next guest says the president's temporary travel ban, the halt rather, it does make sense. Joining me now, the author of In the Land of Invisible Women, Dr. Qanta Ahmed. Doctor, okay, another Paris attack. We don't know the identity of this assailant, but you support what the recent executive order did, right?
I think it's incredibly pragmatic. And even though it's generating a lot of hostility, quite presidential, I think there's a logic to it. It's not an anti-Muslim ban. It's a geopolitical halt to an area that's in crisis, from the Levant all the way to North Africa. Many of these migrants, in the British press, is reporting that the perpetrator in the Louvre was actually entered France in January and has Egyptian identity papers, but we don't know whether he's a migrant. Much of Europe is facing a flood of migrants from Libya, which is now the third front for ISIS. They control 180 miles of the coastline. In the last 3 years, over 500,000 migrants have arrived in Italy. Over 180,000 migrants have crossed the Mediterranean. The numbers are vast, and sitting here in New York, we just don't get a sense of that. Yeah. That's not to say that all Muslim travelers or migrants or refugees are terrorists, but the terrorists are exploiting these human streams.
Yeah, when you bring up Europe and the migrant streams into Europe, the argument is that they are not vetted, that they're coming onto shores, and the argument is that the U.S. vets them. What do you make of that?
I think that's true. I've had 5 different immigration statuses before I became a citizen 24 years after moving here, and the examination of me was exhaustive, and in refugee status, it's even more so. But places like Tripoli or Mogadishu barely control their own city limits. There is no governing force in the south of Libya. Those migrants are coming from the Niger and elsewhere in Africa. So even if they had the means to vet, there's no functioning government with whom to cooperate.
Yeah, it's an important point you make, because they're collapsed states, and who's doing the vetting? I mean, ISIS controls so much territory in Libya and in Syria. You know, what do you make of the fact that President Obama twice backed visa pauses due to terror? Senator Schumer said we should pause refugees after the Bataclan attack in Paris in 2015. What do you make of the Democrats' position now?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily all of the Democrats, but I'm shocked.
These Democrats.
But I'm shocked at their outrage and the public's outrage. Remember, President Carter himself, during the Iranian hostage crisis, asked for 50,000 Iranians to report to U.S. immigration. 7,000 were sent home, and another 15,000 later on deported. So this is not unusual. And we know, as you said, President Obama identified these same 7 countries as an area where visa waivers were going to be revoked. So that says the last administration knew these regions were at high risk. To call an outrage now is opportunism. I'm afraid using the words anti-Muslim or xenophobia is going to shut down critical discussion on radical Islam that Muslims in America like me need to have, and also other Americans need to have. We can't have that climate of hysteria.
Yeah, I mean, it's been talked about that the radical left is teaming up with the Muslim hard right in this country. And I think you wrote a piece for the newspaper Newsday. You're saying you're ready to help President Trump in his fight against radical Islam. But have you gotten a negative reaction to that piece?
Not only to that piece, but many of our discussions like this, conversations, people are deeply offended. They are hurt, people that are readers, people that know me personally. And I think there's a feeling that by not condemning President Trump, I'm somehow qualifying myself as a bigot. But I have a panoramic...
Have you been called those names?
The implication is there. I may have been called and I don't know about it. But I have a panoramic view. I've traveled in Pakistan with the Pakistani military to meet jihadists. I was in Saudi Arabia on 9/11 and watched what happened to this city. And I take care of patients at my facility who are survivors of 9/11 and still have illnesses from ground zero. So with that scope, I understand the threat of radical Islam. My parents and my family is from Pakistan, where we've been struggling with jihadism for 15 years. And we do not have these dilemmas about whether we should call someone a jihadist or a terrorist. That just doesn't exist.
Okay, sorry. So, Dr. Ahmed, please come back on the show. We love having you on. You are so intelligent, so smart. And if you haven't read the Newsday column, please read it. Dr. Ahmed, please come back.
Thank you so much.
Terrific stuff.